So I keep hearing about some issues with the Sega Genesis Mini. A lot of people are complaining that the American version of the system has a 3 button controller while the Japanese one has a 6 button controller. I just wanted to clarify some things about that and my thoughts on it. Specifically, it seems like a lot of people are concerned that this is going to be like the PlayStation Classic, where it didn't come with the more used controller, the DualShock controller with the analog buttons, the analog sticks and everything. But the issue that I have with this is that I never really, as a kid, remember using the 6 button controller as often on the Sega Genesis as I used the DualShock on the PlayStation. The DualShock was almost necessary because you had to, when you were playing games, especially 3D games, those analog sticks were night and day differences. Whereas with the Sega Genesis controller, a lot of games, especially in America, that were released, specifically only use those 3 buttons. And then you may have some enhancements here and there with the 3 button control, with the 6 button controller. But a lot of the games that used or utilized it didn't really make much use of it. And that was something that, for me personally, I prefer usually to have the feel of the original 3 button controller over the 6 button controller. The only time I ended up using the 6 button controller was for games that required it, and I don't really remember many that actually do require it. But there was some games that, yeah, if you were playing it, you just couldn't get very far simply because you needed those extra 3 buttons. But besides that, like most games that I remember, at least in the U.S., did not require that controller, and in my opinion, it kind of was hindering for a lot of games. And then I think there are some games that actually cannot be used with that controller. And here's the other thing: I don't think the Japanese system is coming with two 6 button controllers. I think one of them's a 6 button controller and the other one's going to be a 3 button controller. I may be incorrect with that. It may be just that there's two systems being released. One is the original system with just one controller, which I think that one is only a 3 button controller. And then the second system that comes out is going to be two controllers, but it's going to be two 6 button controllers. I'm not sure on this yet. I don't think I've been reading up a lot on the Japanese sites, and I don't see that information really being available. There's still not any pre-orders for it. There are pre-orders for the American system already on GameStop and Walmart if you look up, and you can see what's available. But personally, I don't think it's much of a concern for most people, especially if you're buying an American system or one in the Western market. I don't think you should really be concerned that it doesn't come with the 6 button controller. And the reason for that is because in most American and Western games, they didn't really utilize it, basically because sales weren't great for preferables, and Sega kind of realized this after they released the Sega CD, and then slowly over time they realized that people weren't necessarily going out to buy those controllers. And when they did, they usually bought like a cheapo one just to play one game. And so, like, honestly, I don't think they were worried about it. And of the 40 games which are coming out, from what we can see in the list of the Sega games that are already announced, like none of those games use the 6 button controller, and personally, I would not use the 6 button controller for those games. And just to honestly be to state my opinion, I believe those games that have already been announced are much better than all the games that are on the SNES Classic. And the reason for that is basically because the SNES Classic had games that we've already mostly played, and they're mostly only Sega. I mean, they're mostly only Nintendo games. Whereas this has a list so far that are mostly all Sega games, but they're very fun games. Like you also have like good Capcom games, and you have Toe Jam and Earl in there. It's looking great. But here's the thing: if you're probably people are going to hack this, and once you hack this, you're gonna want that 6 button controller. And when it comes to this, I don't think you really should be thinking about trying to get a Sega Genesis controller with 6 buttons. Yeah, you may be able to, for instance, import the Japanese one and just get that controller. But I think the better option is just get the 8BitDo controller, and those are available now. Like you can literally buy that right now, and you're going to be set. Just buy the Bluetooth one, I think, the one with the USB on it, and you're set when that system gets hacked. Like you're gonna have a 6 button controller, and it's gonna be one of the best wireless 6 button controllers that you can have. There's really no concern whatsoever to worry about not having the 6 button controller. This is not at all, in my opinion, like what happened with the Sony PlayStation Classic. That thing, Even once you hack it, it's kind of like a hassle to find a DualShock controller and how to connect it. Like it's not even available. And when you do get one to work, it's more of a hassle because you need to use one of the controller ports. As of the time of this video, you need to find like you usually have to connect it to one of the controller ports, and then you can't really do play 2-player games or anything. But I mean, it's a workaround, and it's kind of messy. It's kind of a lot of work. Where I don't think that's gonna be the case with the PlayStation. I mean, with the Sega Genesis Classic or the Sega Genesis Mini. You're just gonna be able to connect any the USB controller, and you're going to play that game. So I don't think that's something to worry about. This system's probably going to be great, unless somehow this is gonna be like an at games console again, where like the emulation is just crap, and then you have terrible sound. But I don't think Sega took a year off to make this system, like make sure that it's working well, just to release a crappier version or a similar at games version of the system when they could have done that last year. I really do believe this is going to be a great system with great emulation. I don't think Sega's just not like Sony in this. Like I don't think Sony, basically what they did, they had not ever released a classic system before, so they went out and they did the bare minimum and try to rush that system out, and they basically just downloaded an emulator off the internet, put it on the system, and then sold it to people half-assed, basically, with terrible games. And basically people kind of didn't buy it. You can probably pick one up for $40 or under at the moment. But the Sega Genesis Mini doesn't seem to have this issue. I mean, first of all, it's older games. It's going to be easier to emulate. Plus, they're hiring people to emulate this. And they also spent a whole year where they delayed the system just to make sure that it's great once it comes out. It has a cartridge slot. I don't think this is going to be anywhere near what At Games released. It's going to be better. Is it going to be Analogue SG better? I don't think so. I think the Analogue Mega SG is still going to be better overall because it's going to have probably better sound and better options, but still this is going to be comparable to, say, the SNES Classic. At least I think it should be like at the bare minimum it's going to be at that level, and I don't think people need to worry about it. I don't know if this thing's going to sell out. Like, it's Sega, it's not Nintendo. They're probably going to release a ton of these, and then also people may have already kind of, been disappointed by the PlayStation Classic, so they may be holding off. And also, let's face it, Sega has released those ad game systems before, and people are maybe, a little bit more iffy about going out there and dropping some cash on this system. But I honestly think people should, because I think this is going to surprise a lot of people. And finally, we're going to have a decent emulation solution from Sega themselves, and this one's going to probably be very well done and very good. So should you buy it? Yeah, I recommend at the moment at least pre-order it, because these may sell out for Christmas. If you want it for Christmas, I think you should pre-order it now if it's still available, and worry about it later. If you see early reviews and you're getting hints of like a PlayStation Classic kind of system, cancel that pre-order and just forget about it. But to worry about the differences between this system and thinking that it might be another PlayStation Classic or another Ad Games version of a Sega Genesis, I would not. They've already kind of tried to correct this. I trust them, and I hope the best. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. I'm signing out. Bye-bye.